The film is being shot by Nolan's returning IMAX cinematographer Hoyt van Hoytema, who shot Interstellar, Dunkirk and Tenet, and it will be Nolan's second film related to World War II events. And while this will be Nolan's sixth IMAX feature to be shot on IMAX film cameras, in order to heighten the importance of history and the perception of it, some of the sequences will be shot in black and white IMAX, developed by Kodak specifically for certain scenes. Months ago, an IndieWire article revealed that Oppenheimer will be shot on a combination of IMAX 65mm and 65mm large format film photography, including the first ever IMAX black and white analog photography. So a big undertaking has gone into developing brand new cameras just to capture black and white IMAX in Oppenheimer, and it's time we go into the reasons for it and the historical connection that the filmmaker has to black and white film. The use of black and white film harkens back to Nolan's earliest films, with a small debut feature in Following, and also his breakout hit Memento, which, like Oppenheimer, features portions in the black and white format. In a previous interview, Nolan said, "I very much loved the structural assistance and the aesthetic charge of shifting between colour and black and white that I had on Memento. I'd always been looking for a reason to go back to that." And in the case of Oppenheimer and the way in which we tell this story, it's very subjectively told, but also with a more objective story strand that intertwines with that. It was really the perfect time to go back to that device that I loved so much. Memento, which Nolan had done a brilliant 18-minute analysis of in the past, is a film that alternates between the subjective and the objective, with the colour being the subjective and the black and white being the objective in the beginning. He plays with the very foundations of how to present a story, but he makes sure that that structure has a foundational purpose, that it guides and adapts as the narrative progresses. Both with Leonard Shelby and the events of that film, you feel like you are realistically both placed in the shoes of the character, but then for a portion of it, you are also lost in trying to understand the problems and questions that this figure has to deal with. And to capture that reality, Nolan of course has always shot on film and made sure that the image of a feature that he puts to screen has an essential timeless feel to it. Memento was shot on 35mm anamorphic, but after shooting groundbreaking IMAX sequences for The Dark Knight, Nolan has since become a key figure in the progressing of large format film. And now we're essentially seeing a combination of both of these pioneering feats on his latest film, with the challenge of shooting on large format black and white film. Nolan said, "We challenged the people at Kodak and Photochem to make this work for us, and they stepped up. For the first time ever, we were able to shoot IMAX film in black and white, and the results were thrilling and extraordinary. As soon as Hoyt van Hoytema and I saw the first tests come in, we just knew that this was a format that we were immediately in love with." In the past, Nolan has made it very clear that he's interested in capturing a reality and a long-lasting feel to pictures on the big screen, shooting practically, shooting on film, and adding a sense of film noir to each of his pictures has helped to achieve this throughout his filmography. And with Nolan continuously expressing his love for film noir and also driving his stories both through the subjective experience and complex narrative structures, he's always finding a way to do something we haven't seen before. And with Oppenheimer, that is yet another story and project that calls for a very unique experience, one that you could say harkens back to his early filmography, but also pushes it forward into a new realm of large format photography. So when it comes to Christopher Nolan's latest film, what scenes can we expect to be in black and white IMAX, and what is the likely importance of them? Well, starting with what scenes, based on everything we've seen so far, whether it's the initial announcement teaser last July, the main online trailer, the IMAX trailer in front of Avatar: The Way of Water, or the few images in black and white that came out in magazine articles, these sequences all seem to be focusing around around the later segments of Oppenheimer's life. You'd expect black and white to be utilized to convey a sense of the past when it comes to a particular biopic story, but from the material we've seen, it seems to indicate a reversal of that idea. There's been shots of Oppenheimer's trials, which took place after the development and using of the atomic bomb, more shots of Robert Downey Jr.'s character, who was a big player in those later trials, the moments where Oppie walks past photographers taking pictures of him, likely once he becomes one of the most talked about people on the planet, and a few brief shots of Oppie at his Los Alamos ranch. These initial shots and images mostly indicate that we can expect a lot of this black and white footage to be set after the Manhattan Project, where they developed the atomic bomb. And that could tell us quite important info about how Nolan plans to tell this story and the importance of that approach. We've talked about Nolan using formats and narrative structures to really play into that subjectivity that becomes a big part of a Nolan picture. And if we consider the story of Oppenheimer, there is both the objective and the subjective side to it. When it comes to the structure of the film, I think Nolan's intention is to have all the early life and Manhattan Project moments in colour, but then intercut the black and white trial or public scenes throughout those colour sequences. It's essentially a way of showing how the public viewed Oppenheimer in black and white, which is how we mostly saw him, versus the more scientific and eye-opening details in those Manhattan Project developments. The more subjective view of Oppie through his personal lens. Based on this potential method, you could add that Nolan may stylistically be showcasing the difference between how the world viewed Oppenheimer versus who he actually was, therefore using black and white and colour to signify truth versus perception. In the book American Prometheus, moments from the court trials are intercut throughout the bomb's development pages, and the moments that do pop up read like historical fragments that display the eventual tragedy and perception of Oppenheimer's later story. So playing with the subjective and objective, which Nolan has played with in different ways before, is something that really seems to be fueling these different narrative sequences. And that leads us quite smoothly into the importance of the black and white scenes. Like I spoke about before in relation to Memento, Nolan uses the narrative structure and different filmic formats in his movies to convey something crucial to the narrative. They have to have a purpose, otherwise it would be unnecessary to the audience. Whether it's the colour of the film or whether it's, say, the IMAX scene or not. Typically in the past, we've seen that the big IMAX moments of Nolan's movies convey a large set piece and showcase the scale or weight of a particular tense moment. But with Oppenheimer, it looks like he's doing the reverse of that, using it for dialogue-driven court scenes or sequences featuring Oppenheimer in the public eye. These scenes, as read in the book, are tense enough to carry this IMAX thread alone, as they focus on the interrogation surrounding whether Oppenheimer was feeding info to the Soviets, and also the questions surrounding potential affiliations with communism. There's no action or much blockbuster-like sensibilities, but instead, there is a focus placed on the sheer tragedy and humiliation of Oppenheimer in the public eye. So rather than using black and white to signal something happening in the past, based on everything we've seen so far, Nolan seems to be using it as an effective tonal tool to showcase the personal decline in Oppie's story, the rise of his career and the development of a gadget that he and other scientists believed could end all wars would essentially be shown in colour, and then the degrading trials and the fall of Oppenheimer during the years later would be shown in objective black and white, intercutting throughout those colour scenes. If this is the direction that Nolan is going in, it may be a great way to make the audience feel just as bleak as Oppenheimer did after the bomb's development and communicate the very tragic sensibility that the end of this story brings. And again, it's a reversal of what you'd expect from a biopic film, with both colour and black and white imagery, and a certain twist on what you'd expect from Christopher Nolan IMAX sequences. If it's adapted like the book reads, then these court trials and later moments in Oppenheimer's life can be just as gripping as anything we've seen from Nolan on IMAX in the past. And as mentioned previously, the colour scenes will also include IMAX photography with hopefully stunning images too. Whether that's all the Manhattan Project scenes, the Trinity test, or the more trippy scientific visuals that we've already seen in previous trailers. So overall, it looks like we're going to be getting a great mix of impressive practical footage in colour, and then hopefully some great moody cinematography during those court scenes and Oppenheimer's later life in black and white. It's signalling that both of these particular sequences are being used as important narrative tools of Oppenheimer's story, meaning that it's more a case of substance over style. Nolan wants his new film to last just as effectively as film noir or Oppenheimer's tale itself, so it's key that he takes the right steps when it comes to tackling this film and the history accurately. And this potential method of approach seems to be a way of doing just that. For much more videos and news on Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, rating, and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.